Good evening and welcome to television.
The TV of 2015 is not the same TV that was around in the 50s. Recently, in the last decade, a lot of media commentators and scholars have been claiming that because of the technological advances that have happened over the last 2 decades, the TV is dead or dying. In our research report, we explore this idea and come to the conclusion that it's not TV that's dying, it's broadcast TV that is dying. Our TV, the TV of 2015 and beyond, is thriving. In our research report, we focus on defining broadcast TV and the reasons why it's dying. To understand why we think broadcast TV is dying, first we have to define it. In the history of TV, television falls under 3 broad categories. So there's the broadcast or network era. In this period, when TV was first created, it's defined by strict schedules. You can only watch what's shown on the TV. There's limited channels, so only 5 channels, 9, 10, 7, ABC and SBS. And there's limited content. It's completely broadcast controlled. After this, there's a phase where there's a lot of technological advances. So the remote control, cable, etc., gives audiences a lot more choice and access in how they get their content. This is termed by some to be the post-network era, but Amanda Lotz actually thinks that it's actually a transition phase. She calls it the multi-channel transition phase, and it's during this phase where we're still coming to terms with the new technological advances like Netflix, etc., when broadcast TV is just chugging along alongside those changes and hasn't been overly impacted as much as you would think. So to understand why we think broadcast TV is dying, first we have to understand the changes that have brought us to where we are today.
Television today is said to be the new media, the information revolution. The nature of the relationship between the broadcaster and the audience member is changing. There are various platforms and more options. Due to this new media, consumers no longer have to wait for live-to-air TV, as everything they want to know or need to know can be found on their smartphone, although this is broadly speaking. Linear television, which is defined as the viewer watching TV programs at a particular time that is offered to them and a channel that is presented on. It has also been named a non-interactive television type, which is the traditional form. Now television has become more interactive and the audiences can participate where they want. For example, shows live to air like X Factor, due to social media platforms, the audience members are allowed to participate and can participate by tweeting, and there it goes live to stream, so it's more interactive and more personal. In 2015, 3 new plays in the digital and streaming space were available on Australian screen. Stan, the 9 Network and Fairfax joint venture, Netflix, which is US owned, and Presto, Foxtel and Seven West Media's joint venture. The digital storefront has become a competitive market, and according to Cliff Edwards, the Director of Corporate Communications Technology of Netflix, this is all benefiting the consumer. Broadcast television is not dying. The audience and technology is progressing to something different, something to suit us and where we are at this point. It's rather being rebirthed and it's evolving into something that will suit us better. And it has become more interactive and personal process, and the audience member has a choice to choose what they want. And that's not saying that the live market is not still in demand, which it is. There's still that audience that prefer to watch live-to-air TV, prefer to see it as it happens. But we are given the choice to choose between the two, and they're still different markets, and they're becoming more interactive together and combining. When it comes to entertainment, the public has more choice now than they ever had before. Broadcast television, as we traditionally know it, has changed and evolved. Not only has the technological form, being able to watch TV and live-to-air TV on different platforms and devices, changed, but so has the audience. According to Dave James from TechRadar, watching live-to-air TV makes him a passive participant in what he's viewing. He has control over the remote and is able to change the channel, but what he's viewing is not of his choice. With Netflix, for example, the participation is somewhat active in this process, and watching television is more interactive than it ever has been before. You're given the choice of what you want to watch and when you want to watch it. People believe that yes, traditional broadcast television is somewhat dying, but then more than that, it's evolving. It's changing to suit our technological advancements and wants and needs of the viewer. A viewer has a lot of accessibility, and the nature of broadcast must suit the audience member, as we are the consumers.
So, what statistics are available to support the fact that Western broadcast television should prepare a tombstone? TV is now no longer just a square box in your lounge room where the family argues over who watches what because they may not see their show again. Instead, content now airs on multiple platforms at any time, allowing us to binge watch episodes or even seasons of shows at a time. You no longer have to buy the DVD box set of your favourite show and sit there flipping through all the DVDs. The landscape of TV is changing rapidly, and major networks and manufacturers have no choice but to adapt. An American article in People Press outlines that the demographics of TV news is noticeably changing. The number of Americans who regularly watch television news has slipped from 54% in 2006 to 48% in 2012, and it only continues to decrease. Even more alarmingly, the number of 18 to 29-year-olds who regularly watch local news has fallen from 42% in 2006 to 28% in 2012. The article also highlights, on the other hand, that despite the rapid growth of digital platforms, most Americans are still receiving their news from traditional delivery methods, such as their television or their newspaper, rather than digital platforms such as through Facebook and Twitter. Therefore, it becomes more evident that it is not actually news and reality television itself that's dying, but more so the television networks that are broadcasting these shows and movies. There was another piece in the Sydney Morning Herald. So according to the piece, ratings from Australian-wide make it clear that traditional broadcast television isn't dying yet, but the way we interact with it is certainly changing. Surprisingly, despite those who argue that traditional broadcast television is already dead, approximately 80% of Australians still watch free-to-air television regularly. So Channels 7 and 9 are already establishing streaming services in addition to their catch-up TV offering. Stan is actually a joint venture between Channel 9 and Fairfax, which streams online TV programs and movies. So if TV is not actually dying, how is it being reborn and via what platforms? Well, John Steedman, Chairman and Chief Executive of Group M, in his piece Television Reborn as the Newest Social Medium, suggests that TV is not actually dying, but it is simply being reborn as the second screen phenomenon or the multi-screen phenomenon. So this engages audiences in brand new ways. People are now multitasking where the second screen is the tablet or the mobile phone, allowing people to engage in instantaneous water cooler conversations rather than waiting until they see each other to discuss a new TV event or a new episode of a show. So some have fears that viewers are actually being distracted by the large number of platforms available to them whilst watching TV. However, there's no evidence to actually back up these claims. Instead, Steedman suggests that they're merely enhancing their viewing experience by becoming more engaged with each other and with the content. As a result of all that is accessible to us in the digital era, TV Tonight editor David Knox explains that many viewers are slowly switching to online streaming on their tablet or their laptop instead of free-to-air broadcast television because of the disappointing quality as well as all of the ad breaks. Within the contemporary digital landscape, Scott Phillips highlights how news comes more quickly via the internet, where there is just an app away, and major sporting codes have their own smartphones and websites now, so streaming is gradually taking over. Much of what we watch or binge watch in Australia, we access online where it's sourced from overseas, Scott says, such as the likes of Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, or even Apple TV. So it's undeniable that Australian broadcasters have been quick to realise that they need to remain up to date and compete with these big streamers. This is why Australian broadcasters are now offering their own version of streaming services such as Presto and Stan. But it is undeniable since Netflix has hit Australia, it's had an almighty impact, and Australian broadcasters really need to do whatever they can to keep in the loop. Platforms such as Netflix are threatening local television networks in Australia as well as in the US and other Western regions, because the problem is that in the internet age, content is king. So if your business is relying on others to produce content, you really have to stay up to date or you could be in trouble.
These rapidly moving times have brought about vast and ever-evolving changes to broadcast television as we once knew it, which in turn causes us to consider the future of this malleable medium. Now, the essence of these two subcategories are the changes that can be broken down into one, the societal causes, and the technological reasons. To appreciate the complete nature of the causes for change, one must first understand on a more fundamental basis how the content itself has evolved over the past 60 years. The golden age of television is a term that refers to the array of TV series from the 2000s through to current times. French theorist Alex Pritchard, in his book The New Golden Age of American Series, explains that it is this shift from family-orientated drama to shows from like Gilligan's Island and Doctor Who to TV as an art form, with series like The Sopranos or The Wire. They're considered more the pioneers of this inundation of new immersive dramas. It's important to notice the correlation between the time period of this explosion of new series and the advancements in technology at the time. DVDs, for example. People were able to watch drama film quality content that dwarfs the usual feature-length size of 90 minutes, with shows that continued an epic story over the spans of 10 hours per season. As consumers gained further comprehensive methods of viewing content, a demand for high-quality television shows ensued. The most common viewpoint is that broadcast TV, as the main method of TV distribution, is diminishing solely due to the advances in technology. Now, whilst not denying that, let's hone in on something more specific. Time shifting, as described by IT consultant Margaret Rouse from Computer Fundamentals, is the process of recording and storing data for later viewing. The convenience of time shifting, accessible via programs like Netflix, Hulu or Stan, or even your PVR controller at home, showed to be perhaps one of the ultimate pitfalls in broadcast TV. The fact that a viewer could now be watching a series at a time of their convenience, as opposed to setting their schedule around a TV guide, was one of the greatest pushing factors for the change in TV distribution from live broadcasting to what became called as on-demand viewing. To bring the focus back to current times, the global trade of TV content has reached astonishing heights due to the various online services' success in distribution. However, with these successes, there will always be complications that can arise from business relations, and especially when dealing with things such as ownership, copywriting. It's clear that the industry has come a long way since the very first conception of TV, especially in the sense of a global marketplace. However, there's still always room for further changes to distribution. There's no single reason for the changes that have occurred to distribution of TV over time. It was rather a culmination of factors that have led to us as consumers to question just how long traditional broadcast TV has before it becomes an ancient technology.
All in all, we are seeing a major revolution in terms of the technologies that have supported and will continue to support our television consumption into the future. These changes will produce a number of challenges and opportunities for the Australian TV industry to respond to, which will determine how far from the traditional broadcast model of television we end up. TV in its beginnings was the stilted box that was always found in the corner of the living room. Turner and Tay define it as the heart of modernity, as it promised the fluid delivery of knowledge and information into the home of the post-war consumer society. Over the years, various technologies have seen it progress through a number of stages, which we're calling the portable screen, the rise of the internet, and into the slipstream. These three distinct stages capture the essence of the evolution of television in Australian society and begin to divulge where the industry is headed. The portable screen stage was the beginning of this technological shift in Australia, and was basically brought about when content producers began releasing entire series of TV shows on DVD for unrestricted play within the home. According to David Marshall, this represented a subtle yet important impact on the migration of television to other screens. The introduction of portable DVD players and laptops were the first step towards truly mobile content. So once the portable screen began to take hold, the internet became the next major factor in the technological evolution of TV in Australia. By 2006, faster ADSL2 and ADSL2 Plus internet services became readily available, which meant that Australians now had the speed and the broadband capacity to stream video at reasonable speeds. So we've begun seeing things like YouTube become hugely popular. Now, this wasn't really capitalized on by the TV industry until, late 2009 towards 2012, when streaming services like iView, 10play, and then the Channel 9 and 7 catch-up services became offered, where Australian consumers could watch strictly televisual content whenever they wanted. Furthermore, this change has really taken flight this year, 2015, even last year a little bit, but especially 2015 with the launch of Netflix, Stan and Presto in Australia. And that takes us to our next stage, the rise of streaming. So now into the slipstream. Stuart Cunningham recognises the streaming age as the death of traditional broadcast television. And this can be seen in the Australian industry, where Netflix Australia has signed up 766,000 subscribers in its first month, which is actually was equivalent to about 3% of the population at the time, which is a huge number. It really goes to show that Australians are willing to adopt streaming as opposed to traditional broadcast, and it shows that there's also a future for Australian content on these platforms, as in that first month Netflix Australia only had about 10 Australian produced shows, but now is well up over 35 different programs, which is a massive leap in the right direction. There's definitely space for the Australian TV industry within the streaming age. So it's not overly difficult to determine that TV is changing and that streaming will most likely be the way of the future. It's happening all around us, and it's plain to see. What becomes more difficult is predicting exactly how Australian television will fit within the wider Western world of content. So for starters, the idea of reincarnation is immediately loaded and subjective, making it really hard to determine whether TV is being reincarnated. Another factor is that we are actually in the midst of all these changes, and we're still seeing things change right before our eyes. So as we're still coming to terms with the exact place of streaming services within Australia, it becomes difficult to determine exactly what's happening and how things will stand in the future. Another problematic aspect of our response is the uncertainty as to whether or not the content being consumed through streaming services can be considered television content, by definition. Does the fact that it's being watched on mobile phones, computers and tablets mean that it's less television than the broadcast content of yesteryear? So furthering on the idea of the US as a model for some of what we can expect with our TV industry, we looked at an enormously comprehensive report published by Google, and the writers Philpott and Kutakaran recognise the massive shift currently reshaping the television industry and begin to delve into how these changes can best be adopted by the industry, reflecting what very well may happen in Australia.